Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Quinn, and I know that I normally don't do this, but I'm recording this in the middle of the day. There's some stuff happening, so forgive me for any background noise that might occur throughout. Unfortunately, I don't really have all that much time these days. Normally, I would go through articles like these and make like a concise little video with all my commentary and nicely produced and everything, but I really have all that much time these days with writing my thesis and such. So I figured I'd just do a video where I just read through the article. I haven't read it myself yet. I decided to keep it fresh for a video like this and give my commentary along the way. So bear with me, ladies and gentlemen. We are reading Knights of the Old Republic 2 developer Chris Avellone discusses the game's impact 15 years later by Jordan Maison. This was published on Cinelinx.com. Without further ado, let's jump right in. 15 years after the launch of Knights of the Old Republic 2 The Sith Lords, the game still holds a special place in the hearts of many fans. Ding dong! This guy right here. To commemorate the RPG's 15th anniversary, I chatted with the game's lead designer and writer, Chris Avellone, about all things KoTOR 2, from the rushed production, his favorite elements, and the game's lasting impact. Avellone offered me a candid look at the development of the RPG sequel. Chapter 1. An exciting opportunity. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna keep up with the chapter thing. An exciting opportunity. Knights of the Old Republic feels like a watershed moment in Star Wars gaming. The first role-playing game in the franchise, its story-driven nature immersed fans in the galaxy far, far away like never before. To LucasArts, it was clear they had something special on their hands, even before BioWare launched the game in summer 2003, and they wanted to start development on a sequel as soon as possible. BioWare was eager to work on their own IP, which, if memory serves, ended up being Mass Effect, but directed LucasArts' attention to a new studio, Obsidian Entertainment. Now that I didn't know. It was BioWare who suggested they go to Obsidian Entertainment. Interesting. I guess because Obsidian Entertainment had worked on like sequels to BioWare games in the past. Like at that point it was like Neverwinter Nights 2. Yeah, Obsidian made. Created in June 2003 by Fergus Urquhart, Chris Avellone, Chris Parker, Darren Monahan, and Chris Jones, Obsidian's founders came with a solid RPG pedigree. Yes, as I describe Obsidian Entertainment time and time again, they're like the phoenix rising from the ashes of Black Owl Studios. But each had come from Black Owl Studios. I should have just read it. Next line. Working on iconic RPGs like Icewind Dale and Fallout 2, while collaborating with BioWare to publish the Baldur's Gate series. This relationship ultimately brought them to LucasArts' attention. Was I wrong earlier about the Neverwinter Nights? Maybe I was. Anyway, we were enormously fortunate to have BioWare recommend us to work on KoTOR 2. Avellone is quick to point out, especially as a fledgling studio, they're the reason we got the chance to work on the sequel, so we owe Dr. Ray Muzica and Greg Zechuk, the studio heads at the time, a big debt. Yeah, I remember they both jumped ship after the EA acquisition. Yeah. Very sad day. The nascent company consisted of only 7 employees at the time, thus making KoTOR 2 its very first endeavor. Project lead Chris Avellone wasn't initially intimidated by the idea. I have to confess, when I first heard we were doing a Star Wars game, I was underwhelmed. It had been a long time since I followed what was happening in the Star Wars universe. And my excitement had peaked with Empire Strikes Back, the best film in the series. in my most humble of opinion. Despite my initial reaction, though, it only took a few weeks of research and becoming re-immersed back in the universe to rekindle my childhood love for the movies and the franchise. Empire Strikes Back was still great to watch, and it still is to this day. This research also allowed me to assemble some themes and questions I had about the franchise I thought would be something to carry into the game, even if I didn't have answers for them. Interesting. Challenges and decisions. Obsidian faced an uphill battle from the start. The team began working on the sequel and being paid for milestones before having the full contract in place. As such, LucasArts decided it wasn't wise to send out a build of KoTOR to us until that was done. While an earlier copy of KoTOR would have saved valuable development time, Avellone emphasizes he doesn't hold it against LucasArts for holding it back. But this left the team essentially guessing at the storyline. I didn't quite know that either. So what they said earlier before, they weren't kidding. They really started working on a sequel before the first one even came out, before the first one was even finished. It makes you think, man. After all this excitement, and still KoTOR 3 never happened. Maybe because KoTOR 2 wasn't, at the time, the biggest of hits. Well, Avellone explains when LucasArts asked for our KoTOR 2 pitch, we had to put together story pitches and ideas without knowing a thing about KoTOR beyond what was on the LucasArts website. Good lord. Considering the complexity of KoTOR's story and the various characters, pitching a sequel blind was difficult. Suffice to say, that pitch was pretty bad, Avellone continued. Worse, it didn't contain a lot of the expectations players might have from playing the first game, since we didn't know what those elements were. When Knights of the Old Republic released a few months into KoTOR 2's development, the team rushed to play as much as possible. Obviously, it drastically changed their ideas for the sequel. Nearly everything from the original script was scrapped. Not much survives between the first and second versions of the script, but trust me, that was a good thing. Still, I am curious to see what was in those first and second script versions. Damn, I wish if Avellone remembers what was in those, I hope someday he talks about them. Oh, maybe he still has them. That'd be great. But still, man, every time people talk about the difficulties of KoTOR 2's development, the one thing that people always go to, of course, is the time constraint. They made it in like a year and a half or something. But Christ Almighty, even before KoTOR 1 finished, they had them start making the second one, and they didn't even know what the hell was going on in KoTOR 1. How did they expect them to make a sequel under that kind of parameter? I wonder. Did they think maybe they'll just make a completely different story? Only loosely tied into KoTOR 1? No, shit, no. Anyway, move on. One element that didn't change, however, was introducing a completely new protagonist, the Exile, for gamers to explore with. Oh, okay. That survived all versions of the script. Understandably, fans were hoping to continue their adventures with Reven in the sequel, but it wasn't feasible for two reasons. One was there was a power issue, Avellone explained. trying to reset Reven's powers again felt like a bad move, and expanding them would have required more added to the system's mechanics. Yeah, this isn't Super Metroid. Can't just go in, oh no, you lost your powers again. The second reason is our understanding of Reven and the plot only revealed shortly before the start of full production. There wasn't a lot of flex time to make adjustments in the short time frame we had to make the game. In hindsight, Avellone admits the sequel would have benefited from Reven's more direct presence in the game rather than foreshadowing established for a third game that never came to be. Alas, time was never Obsidian's ally. So even though they wanted to do that, they couldn't. There was no time to. Scheduling and development woes. Here it is. The biggest hurdle to KoTOR 2's development was the short timetable. LucasArts was eager to get a sequel out to market as soon as possible, as in the following year. Which explains why they started development so early. But it doesn't tell me why, though. I still can't never find a concrete answer as to why they wanted one on the market so quickly. Because, 2005... Yeah, maybe. 2005 was packed to the gills with Star Wars games, true. But it didn't seem to really hinder sales for one or the other all that much, except maybe Republic Commando, which didn't sell badly. It just didn't sell as well. And some people say because it wasn't marketed right or enough. Anyway, moving on. Barely a year and a half to ship out any game is difficult enough, let alone a sprawling RPG, a main reason BioWare opted to pass on handling the sequel. Yeah, give it to those guys. Technically, we expected more time and could have fought for more time. Really, technically, we expected more time and could have fought for more time, Avellone says, of the company's schedule. But a decision both at LucasArts and Obsidian was made to release it in the shorter time frame. Among the owners, I was the only one willing to increase the product cycle and willing to fight for it. On the production side, though, the other owners didn't want to risk losing any royalties in our agreement by taking extra time. There's a financial issue. Obsidian wasn't about to back down from a challenge, but looking back, the decision was ultimately one they'd come to regret. It made business sense at the time, obviously, but it came as a hit to our reputation for KoTOR 2 and future projects, yes. Until recently, we all remember Obsidian Entertainment was known as what Bethesda is today, basically. They were the bug-ridden games company. They made great games with great storylines, very good deep RPGs, but they were always very, very buggy. Troika Games was another studio like that, and made up again from people who used to work at Black Owl Studios. Oh, anyway, what was I? The regret, yeah, it's just a time, yeah. I've always felt the short-term gains of royalties for an unfinished product can reflect poorly on a studio, especially a brand new studio, and it's not worth the cost of what you can achieve in the future. I agree. Honestly, the royalties we earned didn't do much to help the studio as a whole in any event. Overall, I think we'd bitten the bullet and taken a few more months. It would have been good for us in the studio as a whole. If we bitten the bullet, yes. Again, it was our first product. It was. I was wrong before. And the pipelines you establish with your first game can end up being the example/drumbeat you follow for all future projects. That isn't great if they're released with a lot of bugs. Beyond the tight schedule, Obsidian was dealing with problems related to being a newly formed company. Aside from lacking a full team, eventually they'd number around 30 people for the Sith Lords. The absence of in-house IT and QA support was a major hindrance. Arguably, the technical limitations may have been more frustrating than the time crunch, as Avellone explains. Design resources, which are far more important when you already have a working engine, were cut and constrained in multiple respects. We had very few programmers and designers to help flesh out content versus being redirected to UI requests. Getting the UI redone was something championed higher up within the studio though, so we may do with less resources elsewhere. But losing the programmers we did to get that aspect of the game done seriously hurt us. Worse, when the UI got delayed, the UI resources we were hoping for on the content side didn't materialize when we needed either. Wow. Avellone ultimately blames KoTOR 2's buggy launch on the company's eyes being bigger than their stomach. Despite having plenty of content cut, Avellone admits they should have narrowed the scale of the game sooner. On my end, design-wise, we could have downscoped earlier. Cutting the minigames and reducing the companion roster would have benefited the project. I had to write almost all the companions except for Mandalore and Beodur, who was written by Michael Chu, who is now at Blizzard, heading up Overwatch. Did not know that. But then, which companions could we do without then? I know a lot of people would turn and say, Disciple. Yeah, cut the Disciple. But then, I guess, yeah, the Handmaiden would be on both male and female sides then. And also, whatever insights that the Disciple gives us would have to come from somewhere else. Or you just ignore them somehow. But then, you're just creating more holes then in the storyline. Damn, who could we possibly cut? Maybe Hanhar, maybe? Yeah, maybe Hanhar could be easily cut. Because really, he doesn't provide all that much in terms of the overall story. He doesn't show up at the end. He doesn't show up to... But maybe one day I should try and get him earlier. See, and play with him throughout. Maybe he does have more to say. I don't know. Something to think about. Who could possibly be cut from the game? Avellone emphasized LucasArts' help in getting the Sith Lords ready. During development, they sent their own QA people to Obsidian to help in-house and help with getting the cinematics in working order. The game's engine wasn't cutscene friendly either, and there was a lot of time spent on crafting reliable triggers and scripts for them. That's why many of the extended story sequences take place aboard the Ebon Hawk, where the developers were able to better control the placement of characters and their triggers. It would have been better, Avellone says, had we recognized that coaxing reliable cutscenes out of the engine would be too labor intensive, and found another way to communicate what was transpiring in those scenes. That's why there's so many Ebon Hawk aboard the Ebon Hawk, like scenes that happen when you board the ship and such. Lasting impact of the story and characters. Even while relaying the problems and disappointments, it's clear Avellone speaks with a fondness for the game, the efforts of his team, and the overall experience. It's easy to look back at the problems, but regardless of the bugs and cut content, it's a story that struck a chord with fans. Certainly did with me. It featured characters who personified deeper themes players would remember long after the credits rolled. Despite its flaws, there are many fans who would happily argue the story in KoTOR 2 had a story with a much bigger impact. Yes, you know who would argue that? This guy right here. The Sith Lords is a darker tale about dealing with the devastating aftermath of a war between powerful forces. The lines between good and evil are far more ambiguous, and your companions frequently question the longer-lasting moral implications of your decisions. The game's story truncated though it may have been, is one that makes you think through every action and decision your character makes. This story philosophy is entirely by design and found its origins from Avallone's viewing of the prequels. For me personally, the prequels raised some questions about the Force and its effects on the galaxy and the Jedi that made me a little scared. That fear added narrative fuel to the story, and those questions helped drive the plot. Parts of the prequels. I can't remember. Were there any specific parts of the prequels that maybe suggested the fear of, the Force being in control of everything, that everyone is essentially a slave to the Force and there's nothing they can do about it? Can't quite remember it right now. One of the driving factors of the game's themes were the villains and how they continually brought your worldview into question. We presented a certain point of view from the antagonists, but left the interpretations up to the player. We wanted the player to examine and reflect on their own view of the Force, especially considering it was an RPG. As the title implies, there's more than one villain to deal with in KoTOR 2. Yes, the Sith Lords, plural. There's Darth Sion, who's literally held together by pain and rage. Darth Nihilist, who is so consumed with power he's more phantom than physical. And eventually, Kreia, Darth Treya, who guides you along the entire journey. While they're all important, Nihilist was the face of the game's marketing and one of the best remembered aspects of the story. I already see it in bold. I asked Avellone how the villain was conceived and what helped inspire his overall look/character. Brian Menzies and I used a number of references. Among them was the character Faceless in Spirited Away. Yes, the final result of Nihilist's appearance was closer to Faceless than I think was intended. It's hard to get away from that mask pattern. If there's even a hint of it. Plus, Nihilist uses a lot of voluminous. Good lord. Voluminous. Yeah, voluminous black in his design. On the side there we have which characters would you want to see jump into official canon? While Kreia's story I think is done, Reven's could go for a long time and still be as compelling as in the first game. I liked Visage Mod and Atrus, but I think my positivity on Atrus might have been more inspired by some of the cool cosplay that came out using her Jedi robes design. I would be very interested to see an Atrus in the official canon. Someone who basically takes the Jedi religion to its extreme conclusion in the official canon today. That would be kind of interesting, but I don't think they do that. I don't think they want to portray the Jedi as being flawed in any way. Strangely, we also argued about Nihilist's nose a lot. Yep, let's see it. Yeah, see, it shouldn't be here in this picture. You can kind of see it. There shouldn't be anything there. And I've heard them talk about it before. I didn't want any hint of facial features beneath the mask to make Nihilist seem more like a force of nature than a human being, but the nose kept popping back in there, usually in marketing materials. Exactly, he should look more like here, in this picture. Just nothing back there, just a void. Fan expansion. The result of the various problems were a plethora of cut content. There were loftier plans for the game's overall story and character subplots, many of which were written and recorded with actors. Obviously, the endgame sequence was cut short, and a lot of the intended final conflicts were trimmed down into smaller sequences. Some sections of the script were cut short, but I'm glad the original text and voiceover was in the source files. While I got raked across the coals for having those VO files remain in the engine to be found, I'm glad they were there for modders to make use of. Who went after him for that, I wonder? Why would they not want that, I wonder? Like, I would imagine obviously it wasn't fans, but someone at the higher up, maybe someone at Obsidian, someone at LucasArts would bust his balls about leaving these files in. I don't know why. Oh, maybe because they figure someone would find them and be bad marketing to think that, oh, the game is unfinished. I don't know. Avellone is of course referring to the Sith Lord's restored content mod creators released in 2009. The mod's goal was to give the cut content left within the game's code a chance to shine, including bug fixes, extra dialogue options, missions, and even alternate endings. While he's glad much of that content was finally able to be enjoyed by fans, Avellone is quick to point out, I don't feel it should ever be the work of modders to fix and restore missing content. We should have found a way to do it ourselves. But the will and desire wasn't there, unfortunately. Yeah, the game was already done, it was over. You got a new company, you gotta move on to the next game. Can't use time working on mods while you're not making money for the company to survive. That's what it is. But then it makes me think of Josh Sawyer. Remember how, he worked on that himself though, but after Fallout New Vegas came out, he made that mod that rebalanced the game's, how the game worked, the game's combat, the game's hardcore mode and such a bit more. But that was him, that was just him doing it on his free time, I think. So that's different. They didn't come together as a team to make it happen. Anyway, to the future. While many classic game franchises in the current generation have received the remaster treatment, the Star Wars games have been slower to adopt the process. But they are starting to make progress. Earlier this year, Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast received surprise ports to the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4, with Jedi Knight 3 coming earlier next year. Really? And fans have enthusiastically responded. Oh, god damn it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Please, for crying out loud, one day get to KoTOR 1 and 2. In 2015, especially, KoTOR 1 needs something. Because it's not like KoTOR 2 where the chances are high that you can get it running on a modern system with the Asper patch and the restored content mod. KoTOR 1, for the longest time, 100% Star Wars couldn't get it to run because, luck of the draw. But yeah, he finally did though. In 2015, Knights of the Old Republic 2 received a surprise official update on Steam. Among the updates were 4K widescreen support. Man, I wonder what this game would look like in 4K. I don't have a 4K monitor though. Anyway, and integrated access to download the restored content mod. Yes, while this makes it super easy to play now, I asked Avellone if he thought there were any chances of the Sith Lords getting a more dedicated remaster for consoles. People playing on consoles still, like people playing on Xbox One now, but it's still the console version. No patch, no restored content mod, nothing. So I think that's why I get a lot of people asking me in the comment section of some of my videos going, how do you get this scene? I've never seen this. What is this? I'd be more than happy to see it be remastered on consoles for sure, although it might require a lot of technical and artistic oversight to make sure it all works seamlessly. Some remasters can't be made simply because the game might be too difficult to compile, the code wasn't backed up, or the build process for the game barely worked without chewing gum and rubber bands to keep it running. I can't remember what. No. In short, I'd love the vision to be shared as long as it's shared responsibly with the consumer, especially after the bugs. Some of them gameplay stoppers in the initial release version. Why are they showing concept art for Jedi Fallen Order? Oh, because he worked on it, right? While the Sith Lords was Avalon's first foray into Star Wars, it wasn't his last. He most recently worked on script elements for the recently released Jedi Fallen Order. Avalon was thrilled about returning to the galaxy far, far away. When Respawn invited me to work, invited him, okay, nice. Good guy Respawn. When Respawn invited me to work on the project and told me what the time period was, I was immediately flooded with ideas for that era. The time frame has a lot of great drama and conflict taking place after Order 66, and also provided a chance to have the player experience from a personal and up-close perspective. Avellone on his Jedi Fallen Order research. There was a great Dark Horse series by Randy Stradley called Dark Times that was a big inspiration for me in getting in touch with the post-Jedi era and showcasing the challenges that Jedi face in a galaxy overrun by Empire. Dark Horse as in Dark Horse Comics, ladies and gentlemen. They made a lot of Star Wars comics as well. Avellone makes it clear, however, about the collaborative effort that went into Fallen Order's story and his part in it all. I was fortunate to be part of a great writing staff. I wasn't the lead writer. I assisted with writing specific scripts and story and character feedback. The true thunder belonged to the Respawn writers, project lead, and lead narrative designer. Overall, Avellone came away feeling satisfied by the work he'd done with Fallen Order. I reconnected with my childhood sense of wonder by working on Star Wars again, he explained. My ideal is that I can give something back to the franchise that had such an impact on me and guided my love of sci-fi and space opera from my youth to the present day. The test of time. There's a picture missing here. Oh, it's the cover art. Right? The test of time. Knights of the Old Republic 2 endured a troubled production, but 15 years later is still a story embraced by many. Yeah, I know. Even with its flaws, the Sith Lords holds a special place in the hearts of Star Wars fans and gamers alike. The many pitfalls in the rushed schedule could have rendered any other game a footnote in pop culture, yet KoTOR 2 has endured the passage of time surprisingly well. When asked if he'd like to return to the Old Republic era for more storytelling, Avellone didn't hesitate. I am always there, willing to lay my lightsaber before whoever may need my non-force writing skills for any Star Wars game. The deeper into... for goodness sake, keep hiring him then. Hopefully once that EA exclusivity runs out, it'll be, Disney will realize how much of a mistake that was and go back to how LucasArts used to do in the past. And for goodness sake, until then still and afterwards, keep bringing this man on. You hear me, EA? You probably don't. The deeper into the unknown regions and the dark realms of the ancient Sith, the better. I'll do it more than justice. I believe him. As Yoda would say, always in motion the future is. So perhaps we'll get to see Avellone return to this era down the road. In the meantime, we can still enjoy the Sith Lords and hope its story and characters continue to delight us for more years to come. Yes, with the help of my YouTube channel. We keep enjoying the Sith Lord. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that was this article by Jordan Mason. Hopefully you enjoyed this along with my commentary. And take care of yourselves. Peace. God bless, my friends. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, that's it.